I found great love in my 50s. After, and it was the third try, it was a third marriage. But finally, once I had a better sense of myself, then I began to attract a different type of man into my life. And I'm thankful that I'm now with my soulmate. It's not a perfect relationship, but oh my goodness, it's so good. It's so juicy.
I firmly, firmly believe if you don't take care of the minutia that has occurred in your life and learn to turn it into fertilizer for your growth, you will always be in the minutia. Dr. Evie, welcome.
Thank you, Rima. It's so good to be with you.
Dr. Evie, I would love, love, love for you to tell the audience some of the incredible things that you're working on from urban farming
Mm,
and to the faith-based coaching that you're doing, because we're going to touch on a lot of these pieces.
sure. Thank you for having me, Rima. The urban farming. Well, I am a retired university chief of staff. And when I was at the university, one of my projects, one of the opportunities I had, I kind of don't want to call it a project because it was an opportunity. But one of the opportunities I had was to help create an on campus edible garden. And here in Bakersfield, my goodness, we are the heart of Kern County, which is the number one agricultural producing region in the country. And we didn't have anything physical that represented agriculture. And we've discovered through the work of one of our faculty and graduate students that a significant number of our students was food insecure, meaning they didn't know where the next meal was coming from.
Mm.
And so I thought, along with other faculty, staff, and students, that having an edible garden on campus would be able to provide locally grown, fresh picked, beautiful, delicious produce, to help our students eat more healthfully. And so the edible garden is up and running, it's going on, it's continuing at the university. And in my retirement, I thought I would continue that same thing. And so I have this beautiful lawn in the backyard, and it's beautiful grass, looks beautiful, it's aesthetically pleasing, all of that. But I thought it could serve a higher purpose. And so I took out half the lawn and I created a backyard farm, which I call Amor, Amor, which is the Spanish word for love. And so it's Amor Backyard Farms. That's what I'm doing today.
I love that. Would you explain why that meant something to you and how you see this vision of this urban farming being a solution for some of our families?
Sure. Uh, I am passionate. I am driven by love. Love is the greatest commandment. I'm a woman of faith, and I'm a preacher's kid, and love is God's greatest commandment. When the disciples asked Jesus, "What is the greatest commandment?" and he said that it is to love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And whatever you call your higher power, I call that power God. But loving God with all that you are, with all your heart, meaning all your emotions, with all your mind, all your understanding, and all your soul, with all of your spirit, to love God is the greatest commandment. And then he said, the second commandment is like the first, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And there's a lot in that that I could unpack, and I hope we'll get a chance to, but to love your neighbor as yourself. So those are the greatest commandments. And so love fulfills the law. The word says that if you keep those commandments, you fulfill the law. But it's not just the greatest commandment. Love is my core value. Love is my North Star. It's my guiding principle. It is my business strategy. So love is at the center, at the foundation. It's the fabric of everything I do. And since I majored in Spanish and I'm bilingual, I thought, why not, do something a little different and unexpected and call it Amor. So Amor Backyard Farming. That was a long answer to why love. And it's because love is everything. Love fulfills the law. Another scripture, Jesus said, if you love me, feed my sheep. And it doesn't sit well with me that I live in a county that is so agriculturally rich, but we're also the number one city in the nation for food hardship. So there's a big disconnect there. And I am a solutions oriented person. If there's a problem in front of me, I'm going to find a way to come up with a solution. And if I don't have all the answers, I'm going to, collaborate. I'm going to call on people who are smarter than I, who are more experienced than I, and we're going to figure this out together. And so I figure that we all have a yard, a balcony, a patio, a kitchen, and we can grow our own groceries. We can grow our own food. We can feed our families. Not only our families, you can grow so much in a small space. You can feed your family, your neighborhood, your community right from your yard, right from your garden, right from your patio, your balcony, your kitchen, whatever space you have. You can grow your own food and be a part of the solution. Sometimes it's little bitty answers that combined, can create the solution. Sometimes it's not this big ethereal or big answer. Sometimes it's the smallest things that can be the answer. I
It's
give long answers too.
No, that's great. I think it's so neat that you are describing that in a small space, you're able to grow things that will nourish you and
Yes.
at the same time can contribute to someone else instead of only looking out for ourselves, which
Yeah.
is more about love. And farming is definitely not the simplest of things,
Uh-huh.
but it is definitely a metaphor for a lot of things that occur in life.
It really is. And I want to back up just a little bit because I don't want to downplay the importance of loving yourself. Because that second commandment that says, love your neighbor as yourself, the prerequisite, the presumption, the assumption, the requirement is that you love yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love yourself first. If you love yourself, you don't want harm to come to yourself. If you love yourself, you're going to treat yourself well. If you love yourself, you are going to encourage yourself and celebrate yourself and do all those things that are helpful, that grow you and move you forward. So it starts with self love. And, for the longest time, I didn't love myself. I thought I was damaged. I thought I was unworthy of love. I thought something was wrong with me, that I was inadequate and not enough. And that was a self concept that I carried from the time that I was a 5-year-old little girl when something tragic happened to me. And it was a sexual abuse by a family friend, and later sexual abuse by a close relative. And being a preacher's kid, growing up in church, um, there's this scripture that talks about coming to God without spot or wrinkled and being unblemished. And so I thought that because this terrible thing had happened to me as a child, God is perfect, so God couldn't be the problem. It must be me. If God allowed this to happen to me, now this is my 5-year-old mind, my brilliant 5-year-old mind, that if God allowed that to happen to me, then I must not be worthy of God's
Mm.
love. I wasn't worth saving. And so I carried this self image that I was unlovable, I was unworthy of love, undeserving. I carried that throughout my adulthood. And so, coming fast forward to now, that's why that scripture is so important, that you love your neighbor as yourself. So let's focus on the as yourself and start with um, getting to the point where you can say, I love and approve of myself, which is an affirmation that I say that I was taught by one of my teachers, Tara Nicole Kirk. And it took me a while to be able to get to this point, to be able to say, I love and I approve of myself. And it's a great place to be. From that point, you can radiate outward, you can radiate love outward, but it starts with self love. So I wanted to circle back to that, and just, talk about the importance of loving yourself.
Evie, I think it's wonderful that you're emphasizing how crucial it is to really
Mm,
start with oneself. And
yes.
I know on the outside, you have held lots of positions where you're successful and people see you as this radiant, incredible person that gets things done. Yet, by what you were describing right now, is
Mhm,
you were still having challenges
mhm.
within yourself to be able to expand even more. Would you
Right.
touch a little more on that? Because I know there's a lot of incredible young women, even young men, and
Mhm,
adults that
right.
struggle with this to this day.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. And that's something that we can't just gloss over. And when things happen to us, sometimes we unfortunately define ourselves by that event. And so for the longest time, I thought of myself as someone who had been raped. Um, if you give me the sentence stem, I am, probably the first thing that would have come to my mind, and it did come to my mind in my earlier days, was I am, a victim of rape. I am a survivor of rape, and that terrible event. And let me back up: rape and incest. Now, it's not, those words are not pleasant to say. Sometimes they're uncomfortable and they are unsettling. But when you get to a place where you can say those words and they don't own you, they don't define you, they don't have power over you anymore. When you can sit with the fact that those events happened, okay, and they no longer define you, they aren't who you are. They are not your identity. There's something that happened to you and something that you have come through, something you've overcome. So, redefining my relationship with the event was the thing that changed my life. For the longest time, like I said, I saw myself, I identified myself with those events. And so I was still in the emotion of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was still in the emotion of it. I was still in the event itself. Every time I would think about it, it's just as though it recurred again and again. But when I got to the point, and this is in my adult life, in my 50s, I'll be 63 this week. So, it took me half a century to be able, number one, to acknowledge that this happened, and number two, to accept that it happened. And in accepting the bad things that happen to us, the hurtful things that happen to us, the negative things that happen to us, in accepting that they happen, it doesn't mean that you're okay with, um, it doesn't mean that you are validating it or, giving it power. You're taking your power back, as a matter of fact, because when you can sit with those things, the fact that they happen, and you can say, you don't define me. Um, or you can say, because of you, I am now resilient. Because of you, I am the brilliant woman that I am. Because of what I have come through, I have evolved and I have become the person that I am today. So changing your relationship with the things that happen to you will give you the power over it. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense.
Okay.
And I love, because I know you, I love
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you have taken the things that you have gone through. That's why I started with the statement of the minutiae of our lives
Yeah.
and using it to fertilize what's better.
Mm-hmm.
That you take this and take it into the coaching, that
Yeah.
you specifically work with women of faith,
Mm-hmm.
because I know you kind of mentioned that how good God let you down in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you elaborate on that and how you work with individuals so that they can shine?
Sure. I would love to. And this is what I'm passionate about because it took me 5 decades, because it took me, 50 years of my life to be able to even talk about it. And like I said, I'm a preacher's kid. Um, uh, come from a very conservative Christian background, hellfire and brimstone and heaven or hell, a lot of judgment, a lot of condemnation, a lot of shame. and guilt and blame. And so that was the environment, the religious environment that I grew up in. And unfortunately, there was not space, there was not place inside the church, quote unquote, or inside religion to be able to talk about those things that happened and not be blamed or shamed. No, what did you do to cause this? I was a 5-year-old kid. What could I
Mhm.
possibly have done? Or when you begin to talk about it, openly and begin to allow yourself to um, express those things that happened to you. Because when we go through pain, pain has a voice, or the things that happen to us, they want to be heard, they want to be expressed. And when we don't acknowledge um, the adverse things that happen to us, when we don't acknowledge, when we don't process them, when we don't give them a voice and give them an out, they will be expressed in some way in our lives, whether it's at risk behavior, whether it's self sabotage or negative behavior toward yourself or others. The pain will have its voice, the pain will be expressed, it will come out in some way. And so I say all of that to say that I have a heart for women of faith who have been violated, women of faith who have had negative relationships, um, adverse childhood experiences, or adverse experiences in relationships or marriage, or somehow you feel like, you might look good on the outside. Like you said, you might have, accomplished something great in your life. You might have the great job and the great title and the income and the marriage, but somehow there's this nagging undercurrent of inadequacy. Something's wrong with me. I'm damaged. I'm not enough. So when there's this low grade sense of something's not right, it's those women of faith, who I want to reach out to and give a place, give a space to talk about what happened to you. Oprah has this amazing book called What Happened to You, along with a doctor, I think his name is Dr. Perry. And I'll be, going through that book in the month of March, going through a chapter every week. And it is one of the best treatments of trauma that I have read. And again, Rima, please forgive me because I give long answers.
No need to be forgiven at all, as a matter of fact, so that people can truly delve a little deeper within themselves of the
Mm-hmm.
things that they're going through. Because
Mm-hmm.
on the surface, when you think of a church or a mosque or any kind of form of
Yeah.
religion, you think
Mm-hmm.
of them as the safe places where you can go in and be
Right.
whole and be seen by whatever is your faith, that God or that universe or whatever it is sees you as whole.
Yeah.
But when the treatment is not what you believe it needs to be, especially as a child,
Mm-hmm.
how do you learn to adjust and become yourself and
Right.
become your own faith, honestly?
Right. I think that's one of the shortcomings of organized religion, of churches, is that, we're so afraid to talk about sex in any way other than shame, blame, condemnation, judgment. And it's wrong, it's bad, so don't do it until you get married. And then, do your wifely duties. There's just something that doesn't jive right there. And so I think if places of worship, houses of faith, temples, mosques, synagogues, whatever you want to call it, would create space, create opportunity for people to talk about what they've gone through, to acknowledge it, to talk about it, to process it, um, there would be such emotional healing. There would be such emotional wellness, well-being. God cares about our mind. Um, there are so many times in the scripture, and I know we're of different faiths, Rima, but
We're both human.
yeah, our Creator wants us to be mentally well. Um, our mind, our thoughts, the way we process our thoughts, the way that we cope with negative things that happen to us are important to our creator, and our well-being is important. And so it makes sense that our places of worship would create an opportunity for us to talk about what happened to us. And as Oprah said, not what's wrong with you, what is your problem, but what happened to you that has given rise to these feelings of depression, or these feelings of unworthiness, or these feelings of inadequacy. Where did that come from? What is the root, of that? um, and so my coaching with women of faith has been, helping women find good love, good healthy love, good soulmate love. And the running theme that I've discovered is that most of my coaching clients who are women of faith just feel unworthy of love.
Mm.
And so they will accept anything that comes. Any man is better than no man. Oh, no, 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 no. You are worthy and deserving of amazingly good love. Um, Lifelong love, that with someone who cherishes you, someone who encourages you, someone who adores you, someone who wants the best for you. And I find that, again, many of them feel that doesn't exist for me. It's too late for me. Maybe I've waited too late. I'm too old for that. I found great love in my 50s. After, and it was the third try, it was a third marriage. But finally, once I had a better sense of myself, then I began to attract a different type of man into my life. And I'm thankful that I'm now with my soulmate. It's not a perfect relationship, but oh my goodness, it's so good. It's so juicy.
I love hearing that. Your work is so crucial,
Mhm.
not only because it's helping the women heal and become whole in who they are and finding the right relationships, but I
Yeah.
think it takes it to the next level of also allowing themselves as well as everyone that they touch
Mhm.
to talk about the things that we're not okay with in this world,
Right.
and to begin to honestly change the way people behave towards each other. So, at
Mhm.
the surface level, you're working with the women, but
Mhm.
truthfully, you're working with their kids, you're working with their spouses, and you're working with everyone that they touch. And that's so
Absolutely.
crucial because if we don't speak about these things
Mhm.
that have been happening for thousands of years and we're
Yeah.
not okay with them, at
Mhm.
least a lot of the individuals that are the people that actually end up being the person that goes through this event, we're not
Mhm.
okay with it. But how do we not only allow that person to heal and shine, but to also teach the message that as a human being, you don't get to treat someone else this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your work does that.
I think so, because when I think there is the general understanding that when you educate a woman, you educate her whole family, you educate the community. And when a woman heals, you heal not only her, but you heal the family, you heal whomever she comes in contact with. And I think that's what you're saying. Uh, the woman is the heart of the home. um, in my upbringing, it's the man is the head of the household, but oh my goodness, the woman is the heart. She paints the atmosphere, she creates the atmosphere of the home, she sets the atmosphere of the home. And so if she's okay, then she radiates okayness, she radiates health. So whatever is happening internally with the woman, that is what's going to come out, that is what's going to fill the atmosphere, and charge the household, and charge the family, and charge the community, whatever she comes in contact with. So when a woman has a sense of well-being, oh my goodness, there is nothing she can't do, there is nothing she can't impact, there's nothing that she can't change. I'm a big believer in doing big things. We can do hard things, we can do big things, and sometimes the big thing comes in little steps. And I'm getting back to this urban, farming, and doing big things in small spaces, doing big things with little resources. And when you have a big bold vision that, boy, I can make a difference, I can change the world, I can change my community, I can impact, this negative thing, this problem, um, I can be a part of the solution with that. And when you have a healthy sense of well-being, there is nothing that you can't do, even if you have limited resources. When your resources are limited, that's when you become more resourceful, as another one of my teachers, says. And so you connect with people, you collaborate. This person has this skill, this person has this resource. And together, like you said, we impact and we can change ourselves, our family, our community, and the greater, society at large. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you're
Very
alluding?
much. And I know you and I have kind of talked about that off camera. Is
Mm-hmm.
that how the farming piece is a solution for a lot of the challenges that from actually feeding people to feeding our souls?
Yes, yes, yes. Now you call this minutia.
I call
The
the minutia of
minutia,
life as the
the
fertilizer.
minutia in your life. It's the manure.
Thank
It's the caca. It's the dung. It's the hurtful, painful, negative things. It's the aspects of ourselves that we push to the side, that we push to the back, that we push down and hide under the rug. So it's the manure, the smelly, stinky stuff. Um, the hurtful things. What do you do with all of that crap in your life? And so I found in farming, in urban farming and gardening, such a metaphor for life. And one of the most sacred parts of my farm is my compost pile. There's just something sacred, there's something spiritual about composting for me, because in composting you take organic matter, you take something that was once live, something that once had vitality, and that is at the end of its usefulness, physical usefulness, banana peels, eggshells, kitchen scraps, all of that, the dead leaves in the garden, the grass, all of that stuff that seems to be at the end of its life. Oh my goodness. Composting, when you put all of that together with a couple of more elements, it is the beginning of new life. Because the composting is a nature's way of breaking down. Okay, breaking down something that was once living, and when it is completely broken down in this pile, composting needs four things. It needs carbon, it needs nitrogen, it needs water, and it needs air. And in one of my podcasts, we'll tell you about what I believe the spiritual aspects of those elements are. But you combine all of those elements, carbon, nitrogen, water, and air, and this organic matter, and the bacteria and the microbes and the little insects do their thing, and they break down um, all of this waste. Okay, they break down all of this waste, and they process it through their bodies and they poop it out. Let's just be real about it. But it breaks down so that the individual parts, the banana peels, are no longer recognizable as banana peel. The eggshells are no longer recognizable. It's just all combined into this nutrient rich fertilizer that now fertilizes and nurtures the new thing you want to plant. You add it to your soil, and oh, what an abundant harvest you can get. So I say all of that how does that apply to life? If you allow the hurtful, painful aspects of your life, the manure, the crap, the caca, the dung, whatever you want to call it, if you allow it to just sit in your life unprocessed, it stinks up your room, it stinks up your mind, it stinks up your life. But if you take all of that stuff and you put it in a designated spot, and you add some elements and let life do its natural thing and break those components down, there must be a breakdown. Okay. You must break them down, meaning you must process the things that happen to you. And you must add the essential elements to them to help nature break them down. And if you process them, give them water, give them air, give them carbon, give them nitrogen, and we'll talk about the spiritual aspects of that. Give them what they need and let them naturally break down. When the breakdown process is finished and you have finished compost, then and only then will it be beneficial to the new things that you want to grow in your life. Does that all make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And it
Don't get
makes,
me preaching about farming up in here.
I love those metaphors, honestly, because it is true how farming is very similar to life in that
Mhm.
if you don't process things and allow
Yes,
them to process completely so that you
yes.
can create the new and you
Mm-hmm.
attempt something when you're not ready, when the soil is not ready, when you're not ready,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be honestly thinking that you're damaged or
Yeah.
you're not okay when it has nothing to do with that. It has to do that the
Mhm.
process is not complete yet.
The process is not complete. And I want to be specific. The breakdown process is not complete. Okay. It's the breakdown of all of that stuff. It's the questioning it. It's the challenging it. Is it true? You don't just, like I said, you don't define yourself by what happened to you. You process it, you challenge it, you question it, you delve into it, you dig deep, you peel back the layers, you look at the stuff. And sometimes, it's difficult to do by yourself. And that's why I am, a trauma aware, a trauma informed love and life coach for women of faith. Because unfortunately, trauma has we've not given space for trauma, big T traumas. I mean, the big stuff like rape, incest, physical maladies, car accidents, those things that happen in life, the big stuff, and then the little T stuff, the everyday little trauma, the macro aggressions, the little small things that happen in your life that build up. If you don't take those things and put them somewhere and deal with those, address them, process them, then they will continue to clutter your mind, to foul up your mind, to be something that is not pleasing in your life. But oh my goodness, if you compost that stuff and break it down completely, when you are finished breaking it all down, letting nature break it all down, oh, compost is gardener's gold. It's farmer's gold.
Are you using this, the composting and the farming, to also help women in the coaching side so that they can become healed?
Absolutely. So what I'm creating in my backyard farm is not only a working farm and CSA, we'll talk about that in a minute, but also a retreat space for women to come and gather in a beautiful, serene, tranquil, healing space. It's a healing garden. It's very open in the backyard, very beautiful, very serene. And so it's a retreat space where women can just come and you can pick produce if you like, you can plant something you like, or we can talk about the thoughts that you are planting in your mind, the thoughts that have been planted in your mind, the the identities, how you see yourself. What are you planting in your mind? What have you allowed to be planted by others in your mind? And sometimes we can just talk through things and uproot some of these old limiting beliefs and identities and thoughts. So, yeah, I'm creating a physical space, retreat space for women to come here as well. I'm just loving what I'm doing. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity, to do this in my retirement, to reinvent myself, to rediscover myself, and give myself permission, to be so involved in something that I once shunned. When I was growing up, my family, we picked cotton, and my father and mother were field workers, and it was not something I was proud of because at the time it felt shameful. it represented poverty to me. It represented, a lack of education, lack of opportunity. It didn't want anything to do with farming or the soil or anything getting my hands in the dirt. And so I ran away to education, and I got an undergraduate degree in Spanish, got a master's degree in public administration, and then went on to get a doctorate in educational leadership. And so I'm thinking that, education would keep me far away from the soil. And it turns out that education brought me full circle right back to it. And I have rediscovered, I have reframed farming. It is no longer something I have to do, it's something I get to do. It is no longer something that represents poverty, but there is such a richness in growing something that can physically feed someone and that feeds your soul, feeds your mind, feeds your spirit. There's nothing like being out in the garden, being out working with nature, and being able to commune with your higher power. It's just beautiful. Love it.
Thank you for that reframe of that
Yeah.
stigma that went with farming and picking cotton and everything that occurred back
Yeah.
then, and how you were able to transform it into
Hmm.
something that is a lot more valid instead
Hmm.
of allowing it to continue to imprison you, honestly, in your mind and in the way
Yeah.
that you're living your life. And
Hmm.
I can attest to farming. My dad was a very great farmer. Everything he touched would
Ah,
turn green, and it's
yeah.
beautiful. His soul, you can see it in the plants, and you
Hmm.
can see it in his presence of how he lives his life. So there are a lot of incredible metaphors of how we take care of our soil and take care of our food, as well as the way we take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. What did your father grow?
What didn't he grow? If it didn't bear fruit or if it wasn't edible, it was not going to be in his yard.
Okay. I
In a
love
matter of like a year, it looked like we had lived in this house that we're in for umpteen thousand years
it.
because he's so good at taking care of it. And it does take love and energy and effort to work on
Hmm.
those things, just like it does taking care of the things that we have grown through so that we can become better. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen naturally. It's
Right.
effort.
Right. And it's a process. It is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. The compost doesn't happen overnight. You don't break down completely things overnight. It takes weeks. It takes months, sometimes 6 months, to have something that is finished and that can now fertilize what you're growing in your life. So yeah, it takes time, it takes attention, it takes intention, and it takes compassion and empathy. Um, Self compassion, being able to forgive yourself. I love Oprah's definition of forgiveness, and I'm not going to get it perfectly, but she says forgiveness is giving up the hope that you can change the things that happened in the past. Oh, that's powerful. Sometimes we ruminate on the hurtful things that have happened to us over and over. Why did he do that to me? Why did God allow this to happen to me? Why didn't God save me? And what I've recognized, at least for myself, is that if I'm still, forgive me, if I am asking the question, why did this happen to me? That's an indication to me that I'm still in the story of what happened to me. But now, as a soon to be 63-year-old amazing woman, um, I can look back on what happened to me as a child, and, having changing my perspective on it from being inside the story to now being outside and being able to stand on what happened to me as a child. This is who I have become as a result of my coming through that. Okay? Um, I would never, ever call what happened to me as a gift. That doesn't sit well with me. But there are things that I learned from it. There are things that I became because of it. There are talents that came to the surface because I was trying to find a way to be resilient. I was trying to find a way to cope with what had happened to me. And so some talent, some latent talents came to the surface. I lost myself in books. um, I lost myself in learning. And because of that, thank you, 5 year old self. Thank you, 9 year old Evie. Because of my love for books and learning, I got to go to the university. I got to get a degree. I got to live life outside of Bakersfield. My world got bigger, not smaller. And, so I said all of that to say what was my point in coming to that is that you know we have to not have to we get to process and then see what happened to us from a different perspective, from the perspective of now, not then. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Evie, what is the vision with the urban farming?
Mm. Like I said, I dream big. I have big dreams, I have big goals, and the immediate thing with the urban farming is twofold. One is to create a CSA, community supported agriculture, where with the produce that I'm growing using organic practices on my backyard farm, that I create biweekly produce boxes. People can subscribe to get whatever is growing in season, and you will have delivered to you these fresh produce. And so it's physically feeding people, and it will be affordable and accessible. Sometimes I think farmers markets are a little overpriced, and people who really want freshly grown produce can't afford them at farmers markets. And so with the subscription farm box, CSA box, it's accessible, it's affordable, it's healthy, locally grown, freshly picked. So the CSA program is that one aspect. The other is creating the retreat space for, like I said, for women to come and heal and process things that they've never talked about, perhaps. And then there's a third. I want to be a model, a demonstration garden, showing other people how you can up level your lawn, how you can grow things on your balcony, your patio, your kitchen. So showing other people how to create a backyard garden, a backyard farm, vertical gardening, aquaponics, hydroponics, you name it. So being that kind of demonstration. So that's the thought with the urban garden. Um, yeah, I believe we can solve this problem of food insecurity in Bakersfield, by feeding our community 1 yard at a time.
And that would obviously work not only in Bakersfield, it would work in
Oh,
any area that people
absolutely.
would take the time to learn the
Hmm.
process and utilize their spaces better so
Yes.
that they can grow their own food. Because
Hmm.
obviously, we hear about organic food and how great it is for us. So they can take that same model that you're building
Sure.
and take it to cities and take it to everywhere that they
Oh,
can
certainly.
be.
Hmm. Absolutely. There's an initiative here in Bakersfield called Project Blue Zone. And have you heard of blue zones in the world?
I have.
Okay.
I will not say I know exactly what that completely means. I will be completely honest.
And neither do I. I'm learning as I am, engaging. But there are places in the world where people live longer and they
Mm.
live healthier. I think the model is live longer, better. And so now there is a project, Blue Zones Bakersfield, and I'm a part of that. I was previously on the Kern County Food Policy Council here. So, developing a food network here, a food hub, a food ecosystem, um, for helping people in Bakersfield live longer, better. And so when you start doing something you love, you connect with other people who are passionate, and other people who are like-minded, and other people who are dreaming big and doing big things. And so I'm loving the opportunity to collaborate with other people who are concerned with food insecurity, and alleviating food insecurity, to do things for Bakersfield and then beyond.
You definitely light up when you talk about your urban farming and your
Right.
compost and all of that. So it's wonderful to see that. Evie, what
Mhm.
is one way that people can connect with you?
I'm on Facebook at Dr. Evie Young Spath, and you can direct message me. I have a podcast coming up in a couple of days, and launching it for my birthday on Friday, called Emancipating Eve. And we will be talking about the way that women in the Bible have been depicted, um, and hearing their unheard voices, hearing their unheard stories, and allowing women to speak for ourselves. Because sometimes this, here I go with a long answer again. Sometimes for women of faith, for spirit centered women, this image or feeling of being unworthy comes from the Bible. I'm going to let that sit for a minute. And so I want to deal with, I want to help women unlearn Bible based unworthiness. And so that's the podcast, Emancipating Eve, that's coming out, launching this Friday. But Dr. Evie Young Spath on Facebook, and Amor, AMOR Backyard Farms. .com, working on the website. It should be live in a couple of days.
Congratulations on your upcoming podcast. I
Thank
know
you.
it's a work of faith and heart in there
Yes,
to really
yes,
make a difference. Evie,
absolutely.
what would you say to someone that is very much still stuck in their past and you have the chance to speak to them? What would you say to them?
The main thing I would say is that what happened to you is not your identity. It is not who you are. It is something that happened to you. Um, you are worthy, period. Point.com. You are worthy, period. You don't have to earn worthiness. You are worthy because you exist. You are worthy because you are a child of the Creator. So the things that happen to you, they don't diminish your worthiness. They can't. Your worthiness is innate. So if you are struggling with um, unacknowledged, unaddressed, unprocessed trauma, call it adverse childhood events, call it, um, relationship issues, domestic violence, whatever you are struggling with, you don't have to stay in that place. You don't have to stay stuck. Um, Allow someone to be in a space with you, in a safe space where you can, number one, talk about the things that happen. Allow yourself to grieve. Allow that wounded part of you to grieve. Allow that part of you to have voice. Those parts that we've tucked away, that we don't want to talk about, that we whisper about, or we don't have permission, we have not had permission to talk about it. Let's acknowledge it. Let's process it. And that's my phone. Let's process it and let's get through that. You don't have to stay stuck. Let's help you change your relationship with those events and see yourself as the amazing, brilliant, talented, worthy individual that you are. That's what I would say.
Thank you. That's a great, great answer. And I hope that they heard all the gems that you put out. And
Mm.
the other thing is, you talked about your relationship, and this is your third relationship, and it's not perfect, but yet you are very happy. Would
Ah,
you address that perspective where a lot of, I'm going to say individuals instead of simply women,
mhm,
that
sure.
look for perfection? Would you talk
Mm.
about that?
Well, I don't know that perfection exists. We are human, we are fallible, we come with, people call it baggage, but we come with the experiences of our youth. We come with the things that we've seen in our um, original families. We come with stuff. We all bring stuff into relationships with someone else who is also bringing stuff. You call that stuff whatever you like. It's life experience. So there is no, to my knowledge, there is no perfect relationship. But I am in a relationship with someone who is perfect for me. Perfect for me. He accepts me as I am. I accept him as he is. You know, we're married for, this will be 11 years in June, and it's been a journey. And I never want to give the impression that marriage and finding your soulmate is happily ever after. You know, with no arguments, with no disagreements, with no um, disconnects, with no issues. Honey, that's a part of growing. That's a part of deepening the love. When you you laughed at that. Rima, do you agree with that?
I
What
agree. Yes.
okay. Yeah. But if someone's giving you the impression that they never fight, never argue, never disagree, you know, maybe that's a rare, couple that experiences that. But I'm in a real marriage. I'm in a real relationship. And it is worth everything that we go through. It is worth the continuing to learn about each other in different circumstances, different situations. And I don't expect my husband to be my rescuer, my knight in shining armor. He is not here to save me. I'm not helpless. I'm not a damsel in distress. But this amazing man allows me to be me in all the complex, multiple layers of me. I get to be all of that. And my husband, Brian, um, because I am a woman who went through some trauma as a child, this is the first relationship where I have, really felt safe to
Mm.
be me. I didn't have to hide. I didn't have to wear a mask. I didn't have to pretend um, that I didn't have to pretend. Let me put a period there.
Mm.
But I get to be me in all of the amazing aspects of me and some of the not so amazing aspects of me too. I get to be that person too. And he gets to be that as well. So we don't have to spend time together 24/7. Um, I'm not looking for him to rescue me. I'm not rescuing him. But my goodness, it is such a beautiful symphony. It's such a beautiful dance. We learn to move in sync and in step with each other. And so, yeah, if you had told me when I was younger that I would be married 3 times, I would not have believed you. But I was not a good picker prior to learning to love myself. Um, my first 2 marriages were, I chose both of those men. Let me say that. I chose them. And the reasons I chose them, I think were not healthy. Okay. And like I said, it took me becoming a mature woman in my 50s to get to the point where I knew I was worthy of good love and I loved myself. And those were the vibes that I sent out. And when I started sending out those vibes, the different kind of men started responding. And yeah, so with my soulmate, I have found soulmate love, and it's good and messy.
It's wonderful that you're saying that you still work at it. It takes work to create this relationship that allows you to be
Yeah.
you and allows him to be himself.
Mhm.
It doesn't just occur. Uh,
It doesn't just occur.
no,
Uh, and yeah, happily ever after is not the end of the story. I will tell you, I am the happiest I have ever been in my life. Okay. I am more in love than I have ever been in my life. I am living my best life, and better is still to come. So I'm in a great place to receive all of the blessings that God has in store for me. I am in a place to receive all the love my husband has to give to me. And I am in a place to give great love as well in all of those aspects. How is that landing with you, Rima?
it's landing great. I am going to throw out there I am
Mm-hmm.
privileged to have my parents be
Mm.
in a relationship for 64 years. They're
Oh
married.
my
So
goodness.
they are one of the few
Mm-hmm.
that I say I have never seen them argue.
Mm.
And I think, not I think, I know that comes from the purpose of them being respectful of
Yes.
themselves and
Ooh.
of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't treat each other in any way that is going to harm the other person. They don't say words that are going to harm each other. They deal with whatever it is that they're working through so that
Mm-hmm.
they can continue to see each other as individuals. That's been incredible for me to see because you're
Ah,
right. It is not the simplest thing to be in a relationship, and you don't get to see that a lot of times. But I would
yeah.
say that is definitely one of the key is the respect for themselves.
Yes. I love that. Go
E-
ahead.
Evie, is there anything that you'd like to say that I may not have asked you so we don't hang up and go, oh, I wish Rima had asked me this? Is there anything that you'd like to say that I haven't asked?
Well, Rima, you and I could talk for days. There's so much that we could talk about, but I want to hit on what you just said, the example that your parents, are for you. And I had that kind of example as well. My parents were married, for 40 something years before my father passed. And I never, ever heard my father call my mother out of her name unless it was an endearment. Okay. um, I was married to someone who, and I'm going to use this word, I was married to someone who thought my name was something that rhymed with witch. And I never knew there were so many expressions of that word. And needless to say, that relationship did not last. Um, and so and one of the reasons it did not last is because I knew what good love was, and that wasn't it. I knew what healthy love was, and that wasn't it. I knew I had the model, like you said, I had the example of a good, healthy love. And my parents' relationship wasn't perfect either. You know, they had there were so many of us kids and so little money and so little resources, but what we did have was an abundance of love, and what we did have was our faith, in a higher power, and it carried us through. And so I am thankful that I had the example, the model of good love, because that's what I wanted, that's what I yearned for, and that is what I ultimately found. So the last thing that I think I would say, is learn to love yourself. Learn to love yourself unconditionally. Learn to love yourself in all of your amazingness and all of your flaws, all of your flawedness, if that is a word. Learn to love all of the aspects of you because you are worthy. You don't have to earn being worthy. You don't have to work for it. You are worthy because you are, and you are worthy of love. God loves you. Love yourself so that you can love others. That's where I would leave it.
Drop the mic. Evie, thank you. And so, all our wonderful listeners, please remember our attitude always determines our altitude in life. So, for things to change, you got to work from within. Thank you for
Yeah.
being with us. We'll catch you on the next podcast. Thank you, Evie.
Thank you, Rima. Good to be with you.